Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Connection, coming to you from Spirit and Truth Sanctuary. We have a full house this morning. Let it, yay! So many beautiful faces, some that are relatively new, some that I don't see here on Tuesday very often, and some who are back from years of absence. Miss Justina, I'm looking at you. We're going to begin this morning with our prayer of surrender. Spirit of truth, carry me where you will. Bring to me what you will. Take from me what you will. Awaken in me what you will. The Christ man is around me. The Christ mind is in me. The Christ power flows through me. And the Christ mystery exists as me. I believe it. I perceive it. And now I receive it. I am surrendered. Amen, and so it is. Today's devotion is called Being in the Room, and it begins with this affirmation. If you've got your book, let's read it together. Today, I will be an active listener, thoughtful speaker, deep thinker, and willing participant. I will focus my attention with the intention of being and staying in the room. All right, so the text begins with a question. What does it mean to be in the room? And then it gives us the answer. Being in the room means to be completely available and fully present to the people and to the subjects being discussed. Being in the room involves considering an idea that may be foreign or even offensive, and I would add to you, because the same things that are foreign and offensive to you are normal and non-offensive to other people. Being in the room suggests that the subject or subjects being discussed can stand on their own merit and deserve our attention without rejecting, deflecting, or projecting. Now, we all know that you can be physically present in a room with someone and even be participating in a conversation with them, but not really be there. Have you ever had someone or have you had to ask someone during a conversation, hey, where are you? You know, you seem like you're a million miles away. Are you even listening to me? I'm pretty sure all of us have been on both sides of that particular exchange. Being in the room is the opposite of that, of being there physically, but mentally zoning out. The text goes on to describe a little more fully what leaving the room or zoning out looks like. Number one, we leave the room when we reject the necessity of working through an issue that may not be a concern to us. So maybe someone's talking to you about something that doesn't really affect you. So you zone out because you don't care that much about it. Okay, fair enough. We don't all care to the same degree about the same things. And we've all gotten caught in those conversations from time to time. But here's another question. You might not care deeply about the particular topic at hand, but do you care about the person you're talking to? If you do, and if it's something that's important to them, then it's probably something that deserves your full attention, worth giving your full attention to. It's also good in this situation to remember the golden rule of treating others the way you'd like to be treated yourself. It would be hurtful for someone to zone out on you while you were talking about something that's important to you, so don't do that to other people. Okay, number two, we leave the room when we lose presence and deflect away from an issue and attempt to change the subject. So we do this either because the subject makes us uncomfortable or because, as we just talked about, it's something we don't really care about. If you're not comfortable talking about something with someone, it's better to be honest and just say that than to zone out on them. And it's okay to say that. I've done that many times, and you don't have to give them a reason why. But it might be a good idea to do a little self-reflection later and ask yourself, why you felt uncomfortable. Did you just not want to discuss that particular subject with that particular person? Maybe. Or is it because whatever it was hit a little bit too close to home and you got a little triggered by it? Or do you just not like being disagreed with? You know, there's people that they just don't want to be disagreed with, period. Are you afraid of being wrong? Or do you secretly feel you can't back up what your opinion is? Okay? Do you feel like your argument is not good enough? All of those are important things to know, and knowing them about yourself helps you to grow. All right, number 3. We leave the room when we project our own bias into a conversation without giving space for alternative opinions, views, and ideas. In other words, when we think our way is the only way or that we have the only answer, that's very narrow-minded. Again, let's just go back to the golden rule. If you'd like for others to listen while you explain why you feel or believe a certain way that you do, then you have to do the same for them. It's unhealthy to never listen to people whose opinions or beliefs are different than yours. That creates what we call an echo chamber, which we've talked about before. And those only lead to separation consciousness, which is the opposite of unity consciousness. So if you value unity, you're going to have to be willing to listen to ideas other than your own and to people who you disagree with sometimes. The devotion ends by describing the merits of avoiding those things that we just talked about, rejecting, deflecting, and projecting, and what happens when we instead remain open-minded and present. It says, being in the room allows every voice to be heard. Being in the room assures every journey will be considered. Being in the room means choosing to feel the pains and joys of others in the room. Being in the room affirms every person in the room. So, if those are things that you say you value, then it would behoove you to learn how to stay in the room. I've been listening to a podcast recently that has both disturbed and enlightened me about human nature and where we are right now. And I'm going to be purposely vague because I don't want you to necessarily focus on the specific subject matter of the podcast, because that's not what's important. It could be anything. It could be any issue. Some of you may be able to read between the lines as I talk and know what the situation and the particular person I'm talking about, but I want to keep it general in order to emphasize the principle, because on a smaller scale, what happened to this person could happen to anyone and has happened over and over to thousands of others. There's a famous author of a popular book series who had a huge following and was well respected for their work. And this person had had some specific experiences in their life that had caused them to feel a certain way and to be an advocate for some particular causes. So it's going to be too difficult for me to keep trying to be gender neutral. I'm going to slip, so I'm just going to say it's she. It was a woman. So like all of us, her worldview, the lens she looks through when she sees society, has been shaped by the era in which she grew up, the part of the world where she was raised and its surrounding culture, and of course by the things that have happened to her and that she has witnessed in her personal life. And again, that's true of all of us. And because there are over 8 billion of us on this planet, there are a lot of different experiences and worldviews and lenses. But as we know, we're all connected to each other, whether some people want to believe it or not, and we're going to have to learn how to coexist with each other somehow, because the only alternative is for us to destroy each other as well as our home, the planet that we live on. So if we're going to survive, we're going to have to learn how to coexist with people we don't agree with. It is inevitable that at some point, one group or even one individual's worldview is going to clash, is going to be at odds with another one, both on the small scale of our interactions as individuals, all the way up to the huge scale of war between countries or war within a country between different factions within that country, as happened years ago in America with the Civil War. Where there are differences, there's friction. And we as individuals and as a collective have to decide if we're going to be open-minded and gracious and loving and handle things diplomatically, which a lot of the time involves finding compromise with those we disagree with, optimally a fair one where all parties involved give a little and take a little, or we can decide that's not the direction we want to go in, and that will always result in conflict, on some levels even to physical conflict, also known as war. So back to the story from the podcast. This beloved author who had her own worldview shaped by the life she had lived decided to speak out publicly and weigh in on a very controversial and sensitive issue that was being debated on social media and in the news at the time. And there were huge groups of her fan base who disagreed with the particular stance she took on this issue. And when you do what my brother was talking about on Sunday, when you're able to step outside of the situation and just observe what's going on without being emotionally attached, any reasonable person looking from the outside could see that she had some valid points that she was making, and that those who opposed her opinion had some valid points as well. But in the end, what was ironic is they all wanted the same thing. I love the lyrics to that song that Pastor Brandy sings here, The Gift of Acceptance. It says, we all want the same things in life. We want peace and love and prosperity. But can we give up our need to be right? Give the world a present. Give the gift of your acceptance. And that's what the devotion is talking about today. That's what being present and being in the room means. Learning, as it says later on in that song, to honor other people's choices, even if they're not the choices you would make. So to wrap up the story from the podcast, this situation ended very badly with a huge online war between this author and the particular people and cause she was advocating for, and the others who were advocating for a different group of people on the other side. And it got extremely nasty with this woman being physically threatened, and she had to have police guards outside her home, and she had to hire private security for her and her family when they went anywhere. It was terrible and it was ugly. And as a part of the podcast, the host actually read out loud some of the threats that were sent to her. And that had originally been posted online, and it was literally stomach-turning stuff. I had to turn it off at one point because it was so upsetting just to listen to. And it was very vile things people were saying to her and about her. It was nothing but hatred and violence. And yet, number one, they basically wanted the same thing she did. They just wanted to go about it in a different way. And number two, these were mostly the very same people who had adored this woman and been her biggest fans up until this point. And now they were burning her books and denouncing her as a human being and totally trying to shut her down or cancel her. As I was listening, I thought about Jesus, that the same crowd that cried, Hosanna in the highest, when he came in and were throwing their clothes down in front of the donkey when he came into Jerusalem, only days later were the same crowd that was crying, crucify him. So that's why we cannot base our decisions on or get too attached to people's praise and flattery, because of how quickly it can turn into hate and calling for the death of a person or an idea. What we've got to begin to understand is that just as our lives and our values and our worldviews have been shaped by our experiences, so have everyone else's. And they feel just as strongly that they're right, that you do or I do, that we are. So the question is not who's right and who's wrong. Back to the song, it says we can debate till the end of time who's right, who's wrong, and who's right. But guess what? That's subjective because it's different for every person and it's different in every situation. Or the option is, or I can honor your choices and you can honor mine. We can step outside the situation again, as we talked about on Sunday, and observe it from either a neutral point of view or even better, try to see it from the other person's perspective. Walk a mile in their shoes. Be present in the room with them and really listen rather than just try to shout them down and prove that you're right. Because when we do that, when we refuse to reject, deflect and project and instead choose to empathize, we're always going to be able to find common ground somewhere, even if at first it's just a tiny, small little patch. Then we just need to find that little patch that you agree on and hang on to it. And we will realize that if we all allow our higher nature to guide us, we will see that our hearts and our minds are big enough to hold space for those we disagree with and to entertain ideas that may be a little bit different from ours. I heard a man recently describe this process beautifully. He was talking about a different topic, but it was based on the same principle. And he said, when we do that, when we're truly present and open, that's when the neurosis of separation becomes the glory of diversity. I love that. It's all how you look at it. Do you see everyone who holds a different opinion from you as an enemy? Or do you see them as a human being who deserves the same respect you would like to be given to you, and as a beautiful tile in the mosaic of life, a beautiful thread in the tapestry of our society? Think about it. What makes art beautiful? All the different colors. And I'm not talking here about different skin colors. I'm talking about colors as representations of different ideas, of different points of view. If all the tiles and all the threads were the same color, it wouldn't be art. There would be no picture. That's how you make the image, is the contrast of the colors. It would just be monochrome, and that's boring. Our diversity, our differences, that's what makes us beautiful. So let's follow India Ari's advice from her song and give up our need to be right and in favor of honoring our differences. And let's follow the advice of this devotion, which, by the way, today's was written by my brother, and choose to feel the joy and pain of all the others who are in the room, also known as this planet, with us. Let's recognize that our hearts and our minds really are big enough to allow every voice to be heard, every journey to be considered, and everyone's life experience to be affirmed. That's the only way that we're ever going to reach the unity consciousness that we all desire. So let's end this time of devotion with today's prayer. Attentive God, thank you for being in my room and feeling my pains and joys. Grant me the grace to be in the room for all who need connection. Amen. Okay. Lovely. So you probably have in front of you a little card, a piece of paper that Randy has so graciously made for us today. I promised I would give it to you last week, that we're going to start. This is our affirmation / morning blessing for connection that we kind of use as a bridge between our time of devotion and our teaching. So let's say it together today. And you online, it should be on the screen. I allow perfect health in my body, perfect peace in my mind, perfect unconditional love in my heart, and the perfect divine timing of spirit to guide my life in thought, word, and deed. Amen. And let's not let those just be words that we say today, but that we try as best we can to actually live and embody. I know that everyone's hearts are especially heavy this morning about what happened yesterday in Nashville. One more school shooting to add to the already way too long list of them. For the moment, all those of us who were not directly affected can do is to keep our hearts open and send our prayers and our love to all those who have been directly affected, and trust in the goodness and in the mercy of God. There is a wisdom that is higher than our human emotions, and our human emotions are valid and they're necessary, but there is a wisdom that's higher than that, that at these times, we just have to rest in that and know that no matter what it may look like, God is still in control. And more importantly, that the God within us is still in control. And the God that's in you knows deep down that everything is working together for good. I might address that more in depth later, but right now that's all I'm going to say about that today. So let's take a deep breath and talk a little bit more about what we began last week. Today's going to be part 2 of spring cleaning. And I'm going to begin with a few quotes. And it's interesting, though, that even though I didn't plan it this way, a lot of these quotes really kind of address that situation I was just talking about. It said, the first one is, it's dark because you're trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. So, throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to pull you down into fear and anxiety and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly, my darling. Aldous Huxley. All right, next. Strive to find the balance and set fair the course of the cycle ahead. Heal from within before you seek it from outside the self, and then become all you wish to be. Fiona Hutton. All right, next, do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, but all things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is you. L.R. Nost. Okay, next one. I love this one because, everybody knows how much I love words. It says, hate has 4 letters. So does love. Enemies has 7 letters. So does friends. Lying has 5 letters. So does truth. Negative has 8, but so does positive. Under has 5, as does above. Cry has 3 letters, but so does joy. Angry and happy both have 5. The same is true for right and wrong. And finally, hurt and heal both have 4 letters. Life is a double-edged sword, but we have the power to transform every negative into a positive. Practice choosing the better side of life. And unfortunately, I don't have who wrote that, but I love it. Okay, and then lastly, from St. Francis of Assisi, we have been called to heal wounds, to unite what has fallen apart, and to bring home those who have lost their way. Okay, so today's topic is a little bit of a hodgepodge as well as a game of free association, which is where someone says a word and then you say the first word that comes into your head, and then that leads to another word and another one, and you just keep going from there. That's kind of how my studying for this lesson happened and got put together. But eventually a theme did emerge, and I think all the information that I'll give you today will fit together in the end. I'm going to start with a piece by our friend Amanda Ellis and go on from there. Now, bear in mind, what she's talking about, what she's saying here was from a few years ago. It was an older video of hers, and that's important to know because she references in it shops being closed, etc., which was what was happening at the time in the UK where she lives during the COVID lockdown. So she says, I went for a walk down by the beach on Saturday and passed a lot of shops that were closed because all retail is closed here in the UK until April the 12th. And I was noticing that a lot of them were filthy. Dirty windows, mail piled up on the floor, even outside on the ground that hadn't been picked up or opened. And even though some of them had signs in the window saying that they intended to reopen in April, the whole energy was sad, deflated, and grimy in comparison to just a few other shops which were actually looking spick and span with beautiful displays behind clean, shiny windows. And it was so obvious which ones had been cared for during the lockdown and which ones hadn't. And not to judge, but it said a lot to me about the inner world of the people who are responsible for those shops. It's a reflection of their inner state. Just as our own personal cars and houses and offices, their state of clutter or unclutter is a reflection of ours. So remember last week I talked about having a cluttered closet as well as having a cluttered mind just makes your life more difficult for you. It's all connected. Okay, she says, it really brought home to me the thought that we've got to get the energy moving again, beginning with cleaning the windows so that we can see clearly. All right, now, when she says we've got to get the energy moving again, she's obviously referring to the time immediately post COVID lockdown, but her message doesn't have to be specific to that. It can be any time that there's been some kind of stagnation in your life for any reason. Okay, back to her. Symbolically, we need to be changing up the energy right now. Remember that your inner energy is reflected in your outer world, and it's all about getting your inner world sorted so your outer world can begin reflecting the changes you wish to see. This is how we clear the way for the miracle zone. This is one of the ways we turn up the dial of our frequency. So, okay, she's referring here to another piece of hers, called the Miracle Zone, where she spoke about the importance of tuning ourselves to the right frequency in order to see miracles occur, and how focusing on negativity and all that's wrong with the world that is beyond our control only keeps us down in our lower energy frequencies. So she's mentioning that and is continuing with this theme as she's talking about cleaning the windows of our souls, energetically speaking, in order to clearly see where we're going. So right on the heels of that, then I saw a post by my cousin, Bishop Jim Earl Swilley, and he was talking about the month of March, which we're almost out of. It's just a few more days, but we're still in the month of March. So he says, March in the now, a month to make room for miracles. So that kind of just led on from what she was saying about miracles. Time for a spiritual, mental, and emotional spring cleaning. The explosion of color everywhere, new life, new growth, makes it easy to believe for the impossible, to hope again, to dream again. Spring cleaning means opening the windows of your spirit, sweeping out the cobwebs of your mind, and shaking out the dust of your memories. March is the time for those who envision the harvest of the future to begin to plant tiny seeds in the now. The patience to plow, the selflessness to sow, the grace to grow. In just a few days, you'll see miracles start to sprout up all over the place. First the blade, then the ear, then the full grain shall appear. Spring cleaning and prophetic planting mean making room for more to come. It's all about the possibility of resurrection. Anything can happen in the month of March. Okay, so obviously the theme of cleaning things and clearing things out and rearranging in order to make space for the new is the energy right now, is the energy that comes with spring. And if you can't clear it all, at least you can scoot it over a little, and so that you'll have the direction right in front of you clear for something new. Okay, we'll move on now to a piece by Dr. Christina Lopes, where she talks about several spiritual skills we need to acquire to help us with this clearing out process. She says skill number 1 is envisioning. And she describes this as being able to hold a vision of the future that we want for ourselves and for the planet with a bit of stubbornness, because the energy right now is so intense with people creating or attempting to create different realities. Some wanting to move ahead and make the shift into a new and better and higher reality, and others wanting to hang on to the status quo and remain stuck in an energy of drama, chaos, problems, and violence. And the difference between these two realities has become more and more clear and sharp over the last few years, maybe even the last decade. There was a huge energetic shift in 2012, which was 11 years ago now, that I think we're probably still in the process of making. You know, we have to think sometimes when, in terms of our 70, 80, 90, 100 years lifetime, we think of transition as quick, but in the grand scheme of things, sometimes cultural transitions take, a whole decade or hundreds of years even. All right, so we must all choose, she says, we must all choose wisely which reality we want to envision for ourselves as individuals as well as for the collective, and then hold on to it stubbornly. Never let go of the vision of seeing your own life as well as the future of our world unfolding peacefully and in joy. So what does that look like? Let's look at some specific examples. There's another lady that I follow on YouTube whose name is Barbara Goldsmith. And she says this in one of her recent videos. She said it in such a heartfelt way that it touched me. She said, just allow your imagination to run free. Imagine a world filled with kindness. Imagine a world where we don't have to have locks to keep one another out of our spaces. Imagine a world where there are no strangers. Imagine a world where there's no abandonment, rejection, or depression, where there's such a big family, it doesn't matter if one or two are unavailable at the moment. There are another 20 who are there whose arms you can fall into if need be. Imagine a world where there's no isolation, where there's no need for defensiveness, where we can become one and we feel it. Let's visualize that world. So like I was talking about during the devotion, our hearts are big enough to hold space even for those we disagree with. That's the only way we're going to get to this world she's talking about, is if we can learn somehow to embrace people who have vast, sometimes very vast differences from us. Okay, here's another example by a woman named Molly McCord. She actually did this as a group visualization where she led it as a sort of meditation, and she asked people to close their eyes and to do this in real time, which you can do now as I read it if you like. She says, visualize your body healthy and strong, all systems operating at the optimum level they were designed to. Visualize yourself living a daily life that is filled with joy. Visualize healing energy all around you and available to you at all times. Visualize yourself doing what you love effortlessly. Visualize yourself giving and receiving with the flow of the universe. Visualize a healthy planet Earth. Visualize it as healed, flourishing, and green. Visualize its bounty and abundance and how easily it supports all the life forms living on it. Visualize healthy, happy communities growing stronger daily, neighbors working together and beautifully sharing their gifts with each other. Visualize new and innovative ways for us to cooperate. Visualize families feeling safe. Visualizing your home being an environment of love, peace, and security. Visualize everything you need coming to you with ease. Visualize humanity shifting into healthier power structures and forms of government. Visualize a beautiful balance of both masculine and feminine energy in places of leadership. And visualize yourself contributing to all of this in your own unique way. Ah, beautiful. I love that. All right, on to skill number 2. So that first one was envisioning. Skill number 2, and that visioning, that's part of what I'm talking about. Just take a few minutes every day. That didn't take very long. And just, you think, oh, that's not going to help. I'm just one little person. But whatever energy you send out there, energy looks for like energy. And if enough of us start visualizing that, it will become a reality. All right, that was just a side note. Skill number 2, energy sovereignty, which just means getting very good at setting our own emotional temperature. Here in the West, especially, we're trained and programmed to be highly affected by the outside world. How we feel, to a large degree, depends on what is happening outside of us. It is crucial for us to self-generate our internal state, because the energy in the outside world is so chaotic right now, we will be on a constant emotional roller coaster if we don't. Chaotic, negative energy drains us of our own power, so maintaining our energetic sovereignty must be a priority. Okay, remember I've read to you before an excerpt from Esther Hicks' seminar, one of her seminars, where a gentleman had reached the point where he actually said he hated most people and his own life was pretty much nothing but misery. I mean, this is what he came to her for. And so that's because he had lost his energy sovereignty. He had allowed the outside world and events that were going on in the lives of others who were on their own journey and over whose lives he had no control. He had let all of that affect his emotional state and to drain him of his personal power that he has to set his own emotional temperature. And this is what Esther said to him, and I quote, "You are taking upon yourself the burdens and the discomfort of the lives of so many others over which you have no creative control. So the injustice you are feeling is because you personally cannot do anything about any of it. You're taking on more than is yours to take." So that's a very similar idea to maintaining your own energetic sovereignty. We've talked about this over and over. The only person you can control is you. The only attitude and behavior you can change is your own. So take advantage of that to the fullest. Be in control of your own emotions. Exercise sovereignty over the way you feel and what you let affect you. Don't give that power to anyone else. Okay, spiritual skill number 3, energy clearing. As we continue to make this great shift in consciousness, there is great change taking place all over the world. And that means that the vibration of the planet is going in an upward direction toward a higher frequency. But because we live in a world of duality, this just makes anything that's dark or of a lower frequency more noticeable. Okay, time out. So she's saying here, it's kind of like the brighter the light you shine on something, the more you notice how dirty it is. In dim lighting, that's why they say, what's that song? Mary Allison's not here today, but she probably knows that she's my music trivia person. Gino Vanelli, which most of you do not know who he is, but he is an artist that I love. He has this song that says, "Black cars look better in the shade." And he's comparing it to a woman who looked better to him in the dark than she did once he saw her in the light. So, in dim lighting, a couple of little dirty spots here and there are not very noticeable. But when you turn that highlight on, then the contrast is greater. So you see it more. It stands out more. So the higher in frequency and vibration we go as a collective, the more anything that's lower than that is going to stand out. And it's standing out for a reason. So we can clearly see it. Just like the piece I read earlier from Amanda, energy clearing is just cleaning the windows of your soul so you can see what needs to be healed in you. Because pretty much what needs to be healed in you needs to be healed in a lot of other people. So you can see what areas of your life need some care and attention. Back to Christina. She's talking now about dealing with clearing dark energy, and she suggests the following. There is no energy out there more powerful than you, so there is nothing to be afraid of. Energy clearing is simply reminding yourself of this. It could involve forgiving yourself or others, just dealing with any negative emotions and not allowing them to fester inside you. Keep your energy channel clear and flowing. Don't let it get stopped up or blocked by things like sadness, anger, etc., etc. And we've discussed this many times before as well. Constantly dwelling on feelings or thoughts of anger or revenge is like drinking poison, but expecting it to make the other person sick. When you drink that poison, I promise you the only person it's affecting is you. All right. Skill number 4, steadiness. Again, when a shift is happening, the energy is unstable. So the more stability you can provide for yourself, the better. It should be our goal to move forward with purpose. Okay, so as I've heard some people say, walk like you mean it. Okay, don't be tentative in your life. Be steady. We've talked before about some strategies to achieve balance when we find ourselves in a state of anxiety. Okay, one of which is doing the opposite of whatever is happening inside you in order to restore balance. For example, if you're spiraling and spinning out of control, if your heart is racing and your thoughts are scattered, then you move in the opposite direction. You draw in. Okay, you go, if your emotions are going up and out, then what you need to focus on is going in and down, coming back to your center and calming yourself. On the other hand, if when anxiety hits you, you're the kind of person who tends to freeze up and paralyze and not be able to move, then you need to do the opposite. You need to get yourself up and out. Start doing something to get yourself out of that paralysis. So that's on an individual level, and we need to do that, of course, but also move it into the collective realm. What's happening around us right now? Things are unsteady and unstable. Energy is shifting, and things are uncertain. So what is needed to balance that? Steadiness. The more of us that contribute steadiness to the collective, the better. All right. Spiritual skill number 5, and lastly, is flexibility. And this is how she describes it. Although I'm walking in a steady way, one foot in front of the other, I'm not panicking, I'm not freaking out, I'm not unstable, I'm setting my own emotional temperature, I'm also going to be flexible and open to where life takes me. If life sends me in this direction, I'm going to walk steadily in that direction. But if the direction changes, I can be flexible and steady at the same time. In this context, steady doesn't mean rigid and unbending. It just means consistent. A quote that the late Reverend Bob Gass used to say, we all fondly remember him. He often, and my brother often repeats this, he says, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." In the piece that I mentioned earlier from Amanda Ellis, she said this: "The miracle isn't always necessarily what you think it will be. Miracles by nature don't appear in the way you expect them to or when you expect them. If it has to look a certain way or come through a certain person, that's all ego. And your ego will keep your frequency dialed to lower than it needs to be in order for a miracle to occur." So in other words, if we want to experience miracles, we have to remain flexible because we never know when, how, or through whom it will come. So those are 5 skills that are essential for us to be practicing at this time. I'm going to go over them again quickly. Number 1, envisioning our future and doing it stubbornly so. Do not let that vision of what you want for your life and what you see for the world at large, don't become distracted from that or think that it's not possible. 2, energy sovereignty, setting our own emotional temperature and not having it set by outside forces or circumstances. 3, energy clearing, keeping an open channel. Number 4, steadiness, to balance all the shifting, unsteady energy that's present in our world right now. As many of us as possible need to be as steady and consistent as possible. And 5, flexibility. She ends this video by talking about the concept of trust. She says, the more that you trust life, the more you trust the universe, the more flexible and steady you'll be, and the easier you'll find it to be in control of your own energy. Trust that the Creator knows where to take you. The more you trust that you live in a benevolent universe where everything is always happening for your highest good, the better you will fare in the shift. Okay, I want to end today with this thought. Yes, evil exists. And yes, bad and tragic things happen, sometimes to good people. But we can't let that be our focus. We can't let those events take us out of our loving center and cause us to want to run to either one extreme or the other and choose a side and then view everybody on the other side as our enemy. That's never, ever, ever, ever going to be a productive way for any of us to live. We cannot claim that we believe love is the strongest power and force in the universe and that it is the answer to everything, and at the same time act in unloving ways toward our fellow man, even when we disagree with them, even when they do horrible things, and even when they hurt us. Anytime anyone acts in an unloving way, it just means they have lost their connection to source. And they don't need our anger or our hatred or our threats. What they need is our love, our light, and our acceptance in order to help guide them back to their source. Amen? Amen. Mom, you want to come? And we're going to end today with our song, Blessed Always. Join us tomorrow night at 6:30 for our continuing series, Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. Friday morning, 7 a.m. for our devotion. And then we'll see you Sunday, either in person or online.
Blessed always, blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say amen. Blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say amen.
I love you. Be at peace. See you next week.